We've all experienced it at some point. A job we were sure we'd get, a relationship we were certain would last, a dream we believed was finally within reach, only for it to slip through our fingers. And in those moments when the door shuts, it doesn't feel like guidance. It feels like rejection, disappointment, sometimes even betrayal. We ask ourselves, why would this happen? What did I do wrong? The natural response is to see a closed door as failure. But what if it's not? What if that closed door is not a punishment but protection, not the end but the redirection? When something we deeply desire doesn't work out, the emotional weight can be crushing. We replay the conversations, the effort we invested, the time we won't get back. It feels deeply personal, but not every lost opportunity is a mistake. Sometimes the closed door is a very intentional act of mercy. It's hard to see that in the moment because we're attached to the outcome we envision. We've built expectations around it. We've invested parts of our identity into the hope that this one thing will work out. But the thing about faith and direction is that it often requires letting go of what we think is best to receive what actually is. There's a quiet truth most of us only learn in hindsight. We've been spared more than we realize. Think about the doors that closed in your past. That job you didn't get. Maybe the environment was toxic, the leadership dysfunctional, the growth non-existent. That person who left you, perhaps they weren't meant to carry your heart. Maybe they would have broken it, but at the time, all we see is loss. What we don't see immediately is the path we were being kept from the future that would have unraveled us instead of building us. That's the thing about a closed door. It doesn't just say not this. It says not here, and not now, or even not for you. But that doesn't mean never. It just means not this path. And when we reframe it that way, we stop seeing closed doors as obstacles and start seeing them as part of a greater orchestration. We begin to understand that not all detours are delays. Some are deliverance. There are moments when we push hard against a door that won't budge. We try again, we pray harder, we network, we strive, we hustle, and still nothing. And it's not because we aren't trying. It's because the door isn't meant to open. There's something beyond it that we can't see, something the universe or God is keeping from us, not out of cruelty, but out of care. We're so quick to assume that struggle equals failure, but in reality, sometimes struggle is the sign that it's time to stop forcing something that was never meant to be. It takes courage to trust a closed door. It takes maturity to walk away from something you wanted simply because it isn't right. And it takes faith, deep gut-level faith, to believe that something better is ahead, even when all you have in your hands is loss. But the longer you live, the more you realize every no had a purpose. Every detour led somewhere, and the things that didn't happen for you, they shaped you in ways that the yesies never could have. Rejection often feels like a stop sign, but in truth it's a signpost, a direction, a quiet message that says this isn't it, but keep going. And in that message is something sacred, something deeply personal. The reminder that you are being guided even when it doesn't feel like it, that you are not being punished, you are being protected. There's a moment, quiet, subtle, when something inside you whispers that something isn't right. You can't explain it. There's no logical evidence, but it's there, sitting in your chest like a weight. That sense that a decision, a relationship, a path isn't for you, it's not panic, it's not fear. It's a prompting, a nudge from deep within, and it's easy to ignore. The world tells us to prioritize logic, to follow data, to base decisions on what we can quantify and prove. But that small voice, what many call intuition, is often where the real direction begins. We've been conditioned to see instinct as unreliable, to silence the internal warning signs and instead trust what we can see and touch. But intuition is not just guesswork. It's the culmination of thousands of subtle observations, experiences, and signals we've absorbed over time. signals we may not even consciously process. And more often than not, it's also something deeper, a spiritual current guiding us, steering us away from danger toward clarity. When we get that feeling in our gut that we shouldn't take a deal, shouldn't trust a certain person, shouldn't go down that road, it's not just nerves. It's a quiet conversation with the divine. We often feel the prompting most clearly when we are still. Not when we're hustling or performing, but in those quiet moments where our inner voice can be heard. You're about to say yes to something that looks good on paper. Great salary, prestigious name, everyone's cheering you on. But your stomach turns. Something doesn't feel aligned. You try to rationalize it away, telling yourself you're overthinking. But the feeling persists. That resistance is not always fear. Sometimes it's protection. On the other hand, there are moments when the prompting is not to stop, but to go, to move even when it doesn't make sense. To apply for something you don't feel qualified for, to call someone you haven't spoken to in years, to take a risk others wouldn't, and again, it doesn't come with certainty. It comes with a quiet urgency, a pull towards something you can't yet define. In those moments, trusting that inner prompt is an act of faith. You move not because you have proof, but because something in you knows it's right. There's an important distinction to make between fear and intuition. Fear is loud. Fear shouts, it panics, it overwhelms, but intuition is calm, still, centered. It doesn't try to dominate your thinking. It just is asterisk. That's how you know it's something more. When it's God directing your path, the feeling may be subtle, but it's persistent. It doesn't go away until you acknowledge it. And when you finally do, you'll often find a deep sense of peace, even if the decision is difficult. The challenge is that this kind of guidance rarely comes with a 5-step plan. It doesn't come with guarantees or clarity about what comes next. You don't get to see the whole staircase. You just get the next step. And the next step might be to pause, to leave, to apply, to forgive, to speak up, or to walk away. You won't always know why in the moment, but looking back, you'll see how that single decision shifted everything. Many of the biggest regrets people carry are not from the risks they took, but from the signs they ignored, the gut feeling they dismissed, the voice they silenced. We learn over time that trusting our intuition isn't foolish. It's wise. It's a form of spiritual intelligence. It's recognizing that God doesn't always send lightning bolts or burning bushes. Sometimes He just sends a whisper that says, "This isn't it," or "This is yours. Go." And in that whisper is more truth than any spreadsheet or analysis could ever give. There are times in life when something happens that feels too precise to be random. You think about someone you haven't spoken to in years, and they suddenly call. You struggle with a question in your heart, and then you hear a sermon, a podcast, or a stranger's comment that addresses it exactly. You keep seeing the same phrase, the same number, the same reminder, over and over again until it becomes impossible to ignore. These moments are what many people call coincidences, but if you pause and pay attention, you start to realize they aren't just accidents. They're signals, markers, alignments that point to something greater at work behind the scenes. When you start to notice these moments, your view of the world begins to change. You stop believing that everything is random. You stop brushing off the meaningful encounters and perfectly timed messages. You begin to understand that God often works not through spectacle, but through subtlety, through small, perfectly timed events that intersect with your life in just the right way. These moments are gentle, but powerful. They interrupt your routine with a sense of clarity and connection that you didn't ask for, but needed. They don't force you to believe, but they invite you to wonder. It's not always about big life-changing moments. Sometimes it's in the quiet details. A book you were never planning to read that ends up speaking to your situation like it was written for you. A conversation with someone who doesn't know what you're going through, but says something that resonates so deeply it takes your breath away. A door that opens at the exact moment another one closes, as if life itself is rearranging itself in your favor. These moments don't shout, but they nudge you, gently reminding you that there is more going on than you can see. The most powerful thing about these experiences is that they usually come when you're not trying to force anything. You're not in control, you're not strategizing or analyzing, you're simply moving through life, and then something clicks. It's like the universe pauses for just a second to hand you a clue. And when you receive that clue, you suddenly realize that God has been working in the background the whole time, organizing details, crossing paths, placing people and experiences in your life with perfect timing. Of course, you can always choose to dismiss it. You can chalk it up to luck or coincidence. You can tell yourself it's your imagination. But deep down, there's something in you that recognizes the pattern, that knows when something is different, that feels the rhythm of alignment and understands it's not random, it's intentional, it's orchestrated. These moments often come when you're at a crossroads or when you're seeking answers. They can feel like confirmations or quiet reassurances. They can also feel like challenges, pushing you to step out in faith, to change direction, or to take action when you're hesitating. But always they carry a kind of sacred weight, a sense that something higher is breaking into your ordinary life and inviting you to pay attention. Sometimes the signs are external, but often they align with something happening inside of you, a moment of clarity, a burst of conviction, a quiet inner yes that rises up just as the opportunity appears, and that convergence of timing, of emotion, of clarity is where you start to see that life is not just a series of disconnected events. It's a narrative being shaped gently but deliberately by a hand that sees farther than you can. When you begin to treat these moments with reverence instead of resistance, everything shifts. You no longer need every detail explained. You don't wait for absolute certainty. You just recognize that you're being guided, and that guidance often shows up in the most unexpected yet perfectly timed ways. There are seasons in life when everything feels uncertain. Circumstances spiral beyond your control. The answers you used to rely on no longer make sense, and the future becomes a question mark that looms over your every move. In those moments, fear feels like the only natural response. Anxiety grows louder, the urge to fix everything intensifies, and yet no solution seems to come. And yet, despite all of that, there's something surprising that can happen. A strange, unexplainable peace. It's not the kind of peace that comes from having things figured out. It's not rooted in comfort or clarity or control. It shows up in the middle of the storm, right in the eye of chaos, where nothing seems to be working the way you hoped. There's this stillness that rests deep in your soul. It doesn't remove the pain, it doesn't cancel the uncertainty, but it's there, grounding you in a way that logic can't. This kind of peace doesn't come from within ourselves. It doesn't come from positive thinking or affirmations or pushing negative thoughts aside. It comes from something greater. It comes from knowing that even if everything around you is shaking, the foundation beneath you isn't. There's a trust that forms when you've reached the end of your own strength and still find yourself standing. A quiet assurance that tells you somehow you're being held. People often look for peace in circumstances. If the bills are paid, the relationships are healthy, the future is secure, then peace makes sense. But when peace shows up in the absence of those things, that's when it becomes clear that it's not circumstantial. It's supernatural. It defies logic. It doesn't follow the rules we expect. You can be in the middle of grief, of waiting, of confusion, and still carry a calmness that can't be explained. And that calmness is not denial. It's not numbness. It's the evidence of something higher at work inside of you. There's a moment when you stop fighting to understand everything and instead start resting in the reality that you don't have to. That's often when peace finds its way in. Not when the external problems are solved, but when the internal posture changes. When your heart stops trying to predict or control the outcome, and instead opens up to the possibility that you are not walking through the uncertainty alone. Peace becomes possible not because the path ahead is clear, but because you trust the one who leads you through it. You notice this peace most when the pressure is highest. When the decisions are heavy, the timeline is uncertain, and you have every reason to panic. But you don't. You breathe, you pause, and somewhere deep inside, you know that you're not abandoned. That sense of being anchored doesn't come from anything external. It comes from knowing you're being guided by something greater than yourself. That assurance often arrives quietly, without fanfare. It's not always an emotional high. It's often subtle, calm, persistent. People around you might notice it before you do. They'll ask how you're staying so calm, how you're navigating the storm with such grace, and the truth is, you won't always know how to explain it. Because it's not coming from you, it's been placed inside you, given, offered, sustained. It's a gift, not a result. It doesn't depend on how strong or wise you are. It depends on your willingness to let go, to surrender your illusion of control, and to trust that even in the middle of uncertainty, you are not forgotten. Sometimes the most profound messages come from the most unexpected places. A stranger on the bus shares a story that mirrors your own struggle. A friend says something in passing that answers a question you've been wrestling with in silence. You hear a sentence in a song, a line in a movie, or a phrase in a conversation that hits you so precisely it feels like it was crafted just for you. These aren't just random moments. They're delivery systems, ways in which divine direction enters our lives through human voices. We tend to expect divine communication to come in dramatic forms, visions, dreams, loud declarations. But more often it comes gently, wrapped in ordinary words spoken by ordinary people. That's part of the mystery. God doesn't always use thunder to speak. Sometimes he uses someone's casual comment. Someone who has no idea they're speaking into your life. And yet, when the words land, you know it. You feel it. It's not just that they resonate. They shift something inside you. They speak to a decision, a doubt, a question you've been holding in your heart. There's a difference between hearing and receiving. You can hear 100 voices a day and forget them all. But there are a few that land with weight, with clarity, with timing that's too perfect to be coincidence. Those are the ones that deserve your attention. Sometimes it's encouragement when you were on the verge of giving up. Sometimes it's a challenge when you were stuck in comfort. Sometimes it's truth when you were drifting in confusion. These messages rarely come from people who know the full extent of what you're going through. That's what makes it so unmistakable. The words speak beyond the speaker. They come through a human voice, but they carry something sacred. You may be praying for direction, for clarity, for a sign, and then someone casually mentions a verse, a story, or a lesson that unlocks something for you. They don't even realize what they've done, but to you it's confirmation. A subtle nudge that you're not unseen, that your prayers are being heard, and that answers are being placed in your path even when they don't come in the form you expected. This is why it's important to listen deeply, not just with your ears, but with your spirit. Pay attention to the words that repeat, to the messages that keep finding you through different people, to the advice you didn't ask for but needed. Sometimes the same truth will come to you multiple times from different sources, each time with slightly more clarity, more relevance, more weight. That repetition is not accidental, it's guidance. It's God making sure you don't miss the point. There are moments when you feel stuck in your thoughts, unsure which direction to take. You're looking for certainty, searching for the right move, and then someone speaks into your situation without even knowing it. Their words name what you were feeling but couldn't articulate. They confirm what you were sensing but afraid to trust, and suddenly the fog begins to lift. You see more clearly. Not because the person had all the answers, but because their voice carried something more than they realized. Not every word from others is meant to guide you, but some are, and the key is to discern the difference, to stay open, to stay aware, and to allow the possibility that God often speaks not just asterisk to asterisk us, but asterisk through asterisk others. That the answers we seek may already be in motion, arriving one sentence, one conversation, one voice at a time. And when those words come, even if they sound casual or unimportant, something in your soul will know. You'll feel it, that quiet inner yes that tells you this was for you. A growth doesn't always feel like progress. It often feels like discomfort, uncertainty, even pain. But what's happening beneath the surface during those times is more significant than we often realize. When God is directing your path, one of the clearest signs is the transformation taking place within you. It's the slow, steady reshaping of your character, your mindset, your priorities. It's not about external milestones, it's about internal maturity. You start to notice that you're not reacting the way you used to. You have more patience in situations that once pushed your limits. You forgive faster, listen deeper, and find yourself letting go of things you once held tightly. This change doesn't come from simply trying harder. It comes from surrendering more fully. The person you were a year ago would have responded with anger, fear, or control. But the person you're becoming now pauses, reflects, and chooses a different path. That's not accidental, that's growth, and it's not just self-improvement, it's divine refinement. It's the evidence of something sacred at work within you, molding you into who you were created to be. This kind of growth is often hidden. Others may not see it immediately, you might not even recognize it in the moment, but then you're placed in a familiar situation, one that used to break you or trigger you, and you realize you've changed. You speak differently, you see things through a wiser lens, and you know without question that something inside you has shifted. That's not just experience, that's guidance. That's being led, shaped, and prepared for what's ahead. Spiritual direction isn't just about where you're going. It's about who you're becoming along the way. Sometimes we get so focused on outcomes that we miss the point. We think the goal is the promotion, the breakthrough, the answered prayer. But often the real purpose is how we grow in the process. The waiting teaches us faith. The challenges develop resilience. The uncertainty grows our trust. Every step we take, even the ones that seem like detours, contributes to our becoming. One of the signs that God is directing your path is when your values start to shift. You no longer crave the same validation, chase the same goals, or measure success the same way. You start to care more about impact than image. You begin to prioritize peace over performance, and you find yourself drawn to purpose over popularity. These shifts aren't always comfortable. Sometimes they leave you feeling disconnected from people or spaces you once fit into. But that discomfort is a signal that you're being called to something higher. Growth also reveals itself in your capacity to carry what once crushed you. What used to overwhelm you now challenges you. What used to break you now builds you, and what used to confuse you now deepens your wisdom. That evolution doesn't happen overnight. It's the result of daily surrender, of leaning into the lessons instead of resisting them. It's in those quiet choices, choosing grace over bitterness, faith over fear, humility over pride, that transformation takes root. It's tempting to want fast results, to want the direction without the process. But lasting change doesn't happen through shortcuts. It happens through daily obedience, through wrestling with the tension, through trusting even when you don't understand. And as you continue to walk that path, you begin to notice that you're no longer who you used to be. Not because you've achieved more, but because you've become more. And when you see that, you begin to understand that every challenge wasn't just an obstacle. It was a tool. Every delay wasn't just a pause, it was preparation. You were being shaped not just for a destination, but for the capacity to handle it once you arrived. Growth, real growth, is one of the clearest signs that God is not just beside you. He's leading you, molding you, and walking with you every step of the way.